Hello, everybody, and welcome to the UK Skype Under Control. Hello, Piers,
Hello,
and
Kev. Hello, everybody.
hello, Dwayne, the great writer, and everybody. And I'm here with Peter and Gwen. All right then. I'm going to pass the mic first over to Peter, who has a few questions and some dream experiences to share.
Hello there, it's Peter Smith here. Just one or two questions I'd like to ask. First of all, a few years ago I was reading a number of books by a lady called Dolores Cannon, which concerned a lot of deep hypnosis, life regression events for lots of different clients that she took on. And there's a whole series of these books, and as they gradually progress, her sort of experience and knowledge increased, which is quite interesting. And eventually she got onto more stranger sort of things. And one of the things she came up with, I found very intriguing, was the possibility. I know there seemed to be cases where she regressed people who told her that they had actually come back into the earth, onto Earth in a life with memories of somebody else's life rather than their own previous lives. And I didn't quite grasp first of all, whether this was true, which is point one, if that does actually happen. Point two, what's the point of it? What is to be gained from doing that, whether it's voluntary or otherwise? And three, how is it possible, or is it possible for the person concerned to know this, that if they get any kind of past life information or regressions, that they are not their own lives, but somebody else's?
Okay, well, hello, it's Dwayne. Three questions in a row. Well, basically, it's kind of like you go into the library. You decide what you're going to go and read and study, what have you. And just like the computer, you go on, etc. And, as we're in creation here, each one of us has our own interests. And so this is where people can decide to take on other characters or other people, like actors. They do. They perform roles, and they even admit it many times that the role takes them over, because we're all playing a role here. You see, again, the personal mind accepts, what you give it, just like your computer. It's a computer. And it accepts it as a reality, which it is. It's its own reality. So until you're more aware of what else is possible, you accept what the computer mind, is experiencing as the only reality there is. So there's no difference between someone else's experience and yours. You're here to, at some point decide to wake up. In other words, discover how to wake up and recognize the true reality, the real universe is beyond all creation. So what takes place in creation is just creation. Doesn't matter how it appears or how it comes about. It's just creation. And so one of the facets that people experience here is past life regression. In other words, you have a new mind and a new body. Well, this mind and new body, just like the new computer you have, unless you download all the information from your previous computer, your new computer doesn't know about the old computer, you see? So it's the same with your personal mind here every time you re-enter. And so it's really very simplified, but to the personal mind, to people that don't know what's going on, okay, they don't have the real view, they don't recognize their real awareness and see how creation really is and what's going on. This becomes their reality, so it's a question to them. It's a paradox, it's a mystery, it's all these things, you see?
Right. Well, thanks for that. But surely in that situation, if somebody is given access to an apparent past life and they turn out to be a bit of a villain or something, or therefore think they are because they've been given the wrong information, can this affect their life now and what they think about themselves and what they should be doing to put things right for no reason, because it was not them anyway?
Well, it's not about being them or not. Look at yourself. Every moment, you've seen movies, You've heard stories, you've read books. I'm assuming that you have, all of us have. And, you can take on the character of whatever. Again, you decide what you're motivated to do in creation. You have that motivation, you have the intent, etc. Just like the individuals that are destroying the world. This is what they see. This is their intent. They don't have to take on anybody else's idea, but they get ideas from others and they take on those ideas, you see? So again, it's all choice, isn't it? Every moment it is choice. Whatever you do, whatever it is, because it's all created out of nothing. We look at the systems, look at the United States as an example. 300 years ago, none of this stuff existed. The monetary system, all these things. We had cowboys and Indians, and mainly the Indians, etc. We go back a little bit further before Columbus and all the silly stuff and whatever, etc. So again, you see how things are created and how they become. And now we're in the society. We have all this information. And for the most part, relating to anything real and substantial and beneficial, it is misinformation. So again, we have all these ideas, and here now you have the opportunity to sort these things out. In other words, history is what it is. History is experiences that people had or didn't have or written about or what have you. So, again, you are the decider every single moment. This is where you come into the now and you start seeing things for what they are and not what you thought they were. There becomes a difference. See, when people just consider what creation is according to their personal self, well, then they're lost in creation. They don't see it for what it is. It's kind of like voting for the president over here. People buy the pretty speeches, but they really don't take time to look behind the curtain to see what's really going on and the intent and the agenda of these people. So they buy the pretty speeches, they go out there and they blindly vote, but that's a choice. You see, they made the choice. So is that really them? Do they really get the facts, or were they fooled? Did they want to be fooled? Not really, but yet they did fool themselves, didn't they? So again, it's all choice. But fortunately, now you have some real guidance here, and you're on your way. But it's your adventure. You decide all along the way what you're going to accept as your reality and how you're going to figure it out. That becomes the fun part. Go ahead.
Right. One other question I was going to ask actually is sort of related to it in a way, one I've already asked, but I'm considering the position, for example, I understand that our personalities while we're here on Earth are basically composed of two, that when we join the body, there is already a personality that's born with the body and apparently ultimately dies with it, and that our so-called immortal self, soul, whatever you want to call it, has to sort of meld with it, and the two combine to become the full personality of the person on Earth. Well, I've also understood that in some cases they don't get on together, that they're at war with each other basically, and this can result in what people would call insanity, schizophrenia, whatever. But what if one side actually dominates the other and causes it to, or perhaps its dark side comes to the fore? Maybe the sort of the mortal one, the one that lives in the body and stays there, dies with it. What if that is the stronger personality and takes the other one over and causes it to do horrendous deeds, mass murder or whatever it is? And then what happens to the part that survives, the immortal part, the soul or whatever you want to call it? Is it culpable for what the other side's done? And if so, is that taken into account by the lords of karma? I mean, when deciding what's going to happen to it next?
Well, just like what happens here when somebody commits a crime and they're caught for it here, let's say, it's black and white. There are laws set up accordingly. In creation, the laws here are, kind of an aberration of the overall cause and effect reality. The old idea is the law of karma. Okay, we'll just use that. And it's simply, I've just defined it as cause and effect. And so, yes, a person can, maybe a person murders somebody and they say, well, there was an accident involved, so it's not really murder. So he goes to jail for 2 years. But realistically, it's cause and effect. So if this individual intently really murdered somebody, let's say this lifetime, maybe it comes around this lifetime or it goes into future lifetimes. It just depends upon when those situations come together, when those two people come together. But then again, at that point, a choice can be made, you see? So I'm going to give you an example. When I had my classes, when I was with the corporation, for about 20 years, I taught these people and many others, and there was a couple in there that were my good friends, and they had been had relationships in their past life. They recognized that, they were shown this, and the gal had murdered the guy, okay, in a past life, and he carried this emotional, and he harassed her, he beat her, etc. This lifetime. They went through a lot since high school. And I would see them on the real side too, just arguing with each other. Finally, they got divorced. They had a couple kids. They were both fine people, but they carried this on. And she, at some point, decided, you know what? I'm just going to be happy. You know, she dealt with it, etc. You know, it's interesting about what we go through, because again, what you just described is, in a way, it's the personal point of view. Yes, it's like the old idea: there's you, and you came into this life, and you have a soul, okay, the immortal side. Well, that's your real awareness, okay? So now we're stepping it up to where, you know, it's not something out there floating around, or it's somewhere, or there's two of you. Actually, there's really one of you, but there becomes two of you, because just like a mother produces a child, okay, you produce your child, which is your personal self. And just like a person needs a boat to float along the water and cross the sea, you've created this personal self like a boat, because you need this relationship to relate. In other words, this creates an individual position for you to be able to relate to back and forth until you recognize the true reality. So you go through all these lifetimes, you drag this stuff up here and there, you carry this stuff with you. You have all your experience within you somewhere, not the personal mind, but the real you does somewhere. And it decides, you know, like anything, if it's going to relate to that. Just like every day you decide what you're going to do, because it's the real you operating this body. It's not that you're the body and the mind and the emotions and the memory and all this and the intuition, etc. No, that's your created self that you're operating. It's just that you don't recognize that it's your real awareness that's operating this. So when it comes to explaining things, just like a psychologist, whatever, explains things, or when you're you know, talking to these people, etc., you know, they're dealing with the effect. But when you learn to recognize your real awareness, you're going to be dealing with the cause of yourself. In other words, you are the position always. You're always here and now. Life is an isness. Now you know this, and it's more than creation, but you discover how you're going to recognize this reality or not. That's a choice you make. So in the meantime, what you're doing is you're focusing on a lot of information, and it's interesting, and it can eventually, if your intent is to figure it out, and you'll find out, you know, just like the political systems and the religious systems that have been created and all these things, you're going to eventually find out that it's not what you thought it would be, and eventually you will surpass it and see you don't need any of it, because your real awareness is everything more so than creation. But in the meantime, while you're in creation, while you're standing on the earth and you look at the sky and you see the stars, you think, wow, you know, you know, this outer space and this realm and this earth is big. But actually your awareness is bigger. If you just stop thinking for the moment and just look, you know, just see what's going on, you'll see that that's your real awareness, and you're just occupying this body. And these ideas that you've come to know, you know, it's the adventurous part of life is that you decide in creation where these things are going to fit or not. If they don't, I have access to anything I want, but the reality of my experience here is that I'm simply, for the most part, relating to things that relate to the isness of life and not just what is taking place in creation. Because again, creation is just creation. And pretty soon you start to see how small creation is. It's very, very small. And it's all made out of nothing. But we are here, we need this experience to have that relationship, because otherwise we're standing in you might say, an ocean of isness, which is, for the most part, not visible at all, because the real part of it isn't visible. And then there is a part of it that produces the light. It becomes the light. It's so, and then different levels or universes or creation, etc. But at first, we're in that invisible part. We don't see nothing. And there's no recognition of ourselves with anything. So that's why we come into these bodies and we go through this experience, because pretty soon we have something to relate to. So yes, there is two of you, but realistically there's only one, and then you have the created self. So when you get a better grasp through your real awareness of what you're really doing in this body, etc., it only makes sense to figure out and recognize the true reality life is, the all is, because otherwise you'll just be chasing phenomena. You'll just be chasing more lifetimes, more ideas that sound good. Just like the people here, look at most of the masses. Just like what you see in France right now with the riots and the revolution. Why would anybody sensibly waste their time to revolt against an establishment that they've agreed to for the longest time, thinking that they're going to change it? All they have to do is walk away. And by the very fact of what they're doing, it looks good. It looks like they have rights to do whatever. Well, they already have those rights. You don't see the birds and the trees doing any of this. They just fly away. People have the opportunity to do so much more, but they got to take the risk to step up and be real, instead of just doing the same old routines through history and battling what they've always agreed to. And this is what they don't see. So again, it's choices, isn't it? So now you have an opportunity to see more. You realize that you are the real awareness. You created this personal self, and every day you decide, you agree to it or you don't agree to it, what you think, do, and say, and whatever. It's really all you, the real you. It's more defined than ever. The idea that you have a soul was always was created as marketing ploy for you to chase a phenomena around, an idea of yourself, the real you. Now we're at the point where, you have the opportunity to recognize what you're doing, and it's all been you. It hasn't been somebody else. It hasn't been some God that created you and is deciding the fate of creation and all this stuff. You've been told all these things, but if you want to agree to it, you can, and then you just keep staying unconscious, because you're agreeing to the effects in creation. It's just simply agreement, you see? So again, you decide your adventure. So there's a little explanation of it.
Right, okay. Just one more on a different tack, really. And that's concerning animals. Obviously, we're very animal lovers in this household. We always live with animals, all sorts and shapes and sizes. And I read somewhere that because of this situation where humans develop relationships with their pets, talking to them and generally relating to them, we are in fact helping them along. We're bringing them along so faster than they would otherwise be, to the point when in future lives I'll become human beings. Is there any truth in that?
In a way there is, but actually, just imagine, if you can use your imagination, and let's say, what do you have? Dogs, cats, birds? What do you have?
Well, we've got dogs.
Okay, you got dogs. Okay. Just imagine you're the dog looking at you as the human, and you know what you basically do every day. So there's the dog. Lots of times he just sits there, or he lays, or he runs around, or whatever he's doing. He gets up and he wants activity. But let's just say he's sitting there. on the couch and you're sitting in your chair watching TV. Now the dog's watching you. Now all of a sudden you're the dog. You just occupy the dog body watching you. What do you see?
I don't know, really. It's a inscrutable human being sitting there, I suppose, apparently staring into space.
Okay, so you see, you can imagine basically what the dog is seeing, right?
Yeah.
As he's looking at you. Okay, so yes, in a way that's true, but actually the dog is more so helping you, but are you paying attention to what he's providing? You see, so what you've done is you can accept that idea, which is, there's two sides to every coin. But realistically, look at the animals, the birds, the animals, your dog. They don't destroy the natural environment, but you do. You do on a daily basis. So who makes more sense, him or you? And so who's helping, who is demonstrating something more real, him or you?
So what you're basically saying is that they bring us on rather than the other way around.
Exactly. See, it's all in the demonstration. He don't drive a car and pollute and poison the air. He doesn't do those things. He doesn't watch silly TV and accept these ideas of this and that and etc. The dog doesn't do that. He's sitting there watching you do that. So realistically, what is more real? What makes more sense? See the ideas that we get incorporated with here from the know-it-alls? There's so many know-it-alls out there, and it sounds good, and you read this and that, and it's fine. So now you can look at what you've read and what you experienced, and as you become more aware, you can compare the two, like apples to oranges, you see? So now all of a sudden, you thought the queen and the monarchy was really cool, but at some point now you find out that she's reptilian and she eats children. So now all of a sudden you have another view, but the personal self may say, no, I don't believe that. Is it about belief or is it actuality with what is taking place? So again, learn to move your view around and you'll better understand, and you'll see that animals, bugs, fish, whatever, they are the same awareness as you. The only difference is the body type. There is no difference otherwise. They are free beings of real light also. And yes, they are on their journey to eventually recognize their real awareness. But in the meantime, look at what they demonstrate. That becomes the difference. Do you want to be like them and what they demonstrate, or do you want to stay like you and what you're doing? You decide. You see, you're always the decider. So learn to move your view around. This is what's fun too. You decide your adventure. That's what makes children so unique, you see, because they're just open and they're in awe and they have great real sight experiences where the adults can't figure themselves out.
Right, okay, fine. If I just mention one small dream that I had the last couple of nights, which seems a bit timely in a way, because as I explained, I dreamt I was flying, and I'm not very high, but only a few yards above the ground kind of thing, or even lower than that. It's donkey's years since I've had dreams of flying. I used to get them fairly regularly when I was younger, and it's odd because pretty well the next day, in fact yesterday morning, I was reading your book 6, and I got to the paragraph where you say about this, and you say that these are usually associated with children, these sort of dreams, because it's when they get adult, they sort of learn about the law of gravity, and that sort of puts paid to it. And I was just wondering, by the fact that suddenly this has sort of come back to fruition with me, is this because of doing the new you? Is this sort of an indication that I've sort of started to move forward again a bit?
Well, what the experience is basically demonstrating is that you're getting yourself, in other words, you're rising above things a little bit. And just like if you were to, if you're in ground level and you look around and you see certain things, but if you climb up a mountain or go on top of a 10-story building and look down, well, you see a lot more. See, it's about seeing and being. And you decide if that's what you want to be, But first, you start to see something else. And as you're a little bit above the ground, you start to see that, oh, there's more going on. Kind of imagine yourself, if you would, if you were Peter Pan, all right, and you could fly. You just get up every day and fly like Peter Pan, simply physically fly. There are people that can, but let's just say you can. Would your life be the same? I would say no. Would you need a job? Would you need to do what you're doing and your routines and all these things that you do when you're walking on the ground and thinking like a person walking on the ground? So now that you've read the material, you see the real you it's demonstrating that it's becoming elevated. It's not really about the flying aspect. And actually, in the corporation, it was soul travel. And this is a fun experience. You bop around, you fly around, etc. And these are fun experiences. But after a while, when you recognize the isness, you don't need this. You don't need any of that, because you become everything. This is the idea I created with universal position. In other words, that is where you start to see everything, okay? And you don't have to move. Paul demonstrated that too. And when he talked about something one time, he would say that, when I'm in traffic, when I used to be in traffic, he would say, and there was cars up ahead and I didn't know what's going on. He said he would project out of his body, because basically Paul started off with astral projection, which he called bilocation. And he was very good at that. He practiced until he got good at it. But then he said, at a certain point, he said, I don't have to do that anymore. Simply because he has the bigger view. You see, that's a point to point, but you have the bigger view. That's your real awareness. And this positions you in unseen realities to where you can still be in the seen reality. So your experience is simply demonstrating that to your personal self, because you're interested in learning more. So you're being elevated according to how you can define and evaluate what you're experiencing with your reading. You see, so it all kind of goes hand in hand. So there's life, you might say, or the boys giving you a little demonstration of yourself to kind of help you along. So, and again, see, there's always resistance within the personal self. It's like, okay, I want to fly 5 feet off the ground, but I don't want to fly 100 feet off the ground, you see. So again, it's almost like it's not the fear of flying so much. It's the fear of seeing what is taking place. And I know people like this. In other words, with what's really going on in the world, as an example, they don't want to hear about it because it bothers them. They don't want to see it. And so just like this too, what I'm presenting, they don't want to know it. They throw it away and say, no, it's nonsense, because they don't want to see it. They want to cling to their personal self. So once you have these understandings, then all of a sudden you decide, the real you decides, am I going to go with the personal self and what it decides that I've decided for the longest time and agreed to, or do I want to make a new decision and go higher? You see? But anyhow, that's what it's doing. It's giving you a little demonstration because you have an interest there. So you're being elevated a little bit according to, how far into it, you might say, you're going. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much.